must admit, even in this data-rich age, it is actually quite difficult to get hold of any more information than the information I'm going to present to you on a lot of these sites. Every now and then I go back and I search on the internet and I look for new books and things, and I find that there is not only not so much information as there was 10 years ago, some of it's no longer available. So hopefully you'll find this interesting. Before we start, I want to just get some idea of the kind of scales of time we're talking. We're going to go right back to the birth of Earth, but I want to talk just a little bit about galactic ages. Everybody will have heard, I'm sure, in this room of the precession of the equinoxes. What it basically means is we imagine that there is an imaginary stick that goes right through the Earth's centre and that it points out into space. And that as the Earth barrels through space, slowly but surely, this imaginary stick rotates backwards through all the signs of the zodiac, so that over 26,000 years, it points slowly but surely at all 12 signs of the zodiac. That means that it takes, a great year is roughly 26,000 years. Now, I'm not going to if you want to know about all the exact numbers, you'll have to come and hear the talk about the Mayan calendar, because they do it a lot more accurately. 26,000 years, though, and that means that a month, a 12th of that year, is about 2,150 years. So that is a galactic month. So the galactic year is about 26,000 years and a bit, and a galactic month is about 2,150 years. Now, in ancient myth and in temple architecture, we see the bull and the ram occur for 2,000 or 2,500 years at a time. And that is basically our ancestors as they move from the age of the bull to the age of the ram, or from Taurus to Aries. 1/5 of a 26,000 year cycle is about 5,200 years, and that is the Mayan time cycle that we're measuring. The Mayan time cycle started in August 3114, which was when Egypt became a single state, and it's due to end in 2012. Sharp ones amongst you will have noticed that that's 2 galactic months. So the Mayan calendar is actually measuring this 27,000 year cycle, and we are coming to the end of a galactic year. As we move from the age of Pisces, which is the age we're in at the moment, into the age of Aquarius, we're entering a new galactic year. That's why the Maya set up the calendar when they did. So this is precessional year, roughly 27,000 years. The Earth herself is now known to be, or thought to be, about 4,500 million years old. What I'm obviously giving you here is the orthodox point of view as far as I can, which is why the questions need to wait till the end. But this particular figure, I think they can be pretty sure of. There are many different reasons for why they think the Earth is that old, and each new thing they discover suggests that that's about correct. She cooled about 3,800 million years ago, and the first cellular activity occurred 3,000 million years ago. So the Earth was 1,500 million years old. She kind of cooled down and she'd gone a bit hard, and once that started happening, single-celled entities started appearing on the planet. Nobody knows where from or how that occurred. But for the next couple of thousand million years, there were only single-celled entities on planet Earth, as far as we can gather. It's a fast-moving field, and other things might have happened. But as far as I can gather, these single-celled entities filled every single niche they could find, and it took them 2,000 million years or so to do that. And I guess that eventually what happened is it's thought that just 2 of these single-celled entities got together and threw some kind of organic membrane around themselves. It's a bit like one of them sidled up to another and goes, "It's getting a bit crowded here. How about you be the muff, I'll be the arsehole, and we'll see if we can take some of these on." And then you start getting not multi-celled entities straight away, but what you get is twin-celled entities that are cooperating with each other. So that's only 7 or 1,000 million years ago, maybe. So you can see 3,500 million years, that's over 3/4 of the Earth's life's already gone before we've even got 2-celled entities in here. This is how long it takes to stack things up. As we move through this talk, you'll see the whole thing gathers a hell of a pace until we end up where we are now. We barely have time to realise something's happened before the next major thing has occurred. At this stage, though, it was taking thousands of millions of years for different things to occur. It was only 60 million years ago that our first evolutionary ancestor appeared on the tree. Here he is. He's labelled as an early primate here. Here we go, 60 million years. In fact, it's thought that it was a tiny little, originally it was thought that it was a small lemur-like creature, which is a reference we'll see later. I now discover that they think from latest specimens that it was probably a small ape, actually a small ape-type creature. that was sort of moving around in the shrubbery, and it kind of developed up to this. Now, this is now quite an old slide made in 2005, and some things have changed. Like, it was believed that there were no fossils of these creatures in Africa, but in fact they have found some now. The most important point about this is what Elliot Smith said. He was basically a Protestant. He believed in the Protestant work ethic. He believed in Darwinian evolution as it was first formed. And he said, while man has evolved amid the strife with adverse conditions, the ancestors of the gorilla and chimpanzee gave up the struggle for mental supremacy because they were satisfied with their circumstances. So the Victoria guy thinks that the monkeys and the gorillas didn't make it because they couldn't be asked, basically. And the thing about that that's important is that he is looking very much at this subject through the lenses of his own age, through the religion that they had and the scientific theories that they had. He didn't realise that we could tell absolutely nothing at all about the mindsets of any of the things we're looking at by looking just at their remains. And it's important for us to remember that we're doing the same thing. We're looking at everything that happens to us through our own cynical, scientific, religious paradigm. It's very difficult for us to be objective. Also, these are only proposed links. It was thought in Darwin's time that actually we'd see some kind of connection between all of these various primates, and as far as I'm aware, they still haven't found any. It's still a bit like evolution comes across a good model, you know, something with 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 ears, 2 eyes, and it can actually then work on that basic model really, really quickly. So in fact, this diagram would be more honest if there were gaps in between all of these, because really, the processes that led to these whole new species were probably quite a sudden change, not actually a gradual change from one thing to another. So, for example, when you read about gorillas and orangutans, you'll find that when they came about, some of them have got like old world monkey hips, but new world monkey legs. Now, it'll be very hard for that kind of development to happen gradually. It has to happen as something disappears from a niche, something else occupies it and changes really, really quite quickly to occupy the vacant niche. So this is a kind of Darwinian image. We can see that humans and chimpanzees are actually so close to each other that they're almost in the same place in this particular diagram. We actually get the idea, don't we, that with a simultaneous development of the ability to walk upright, a bigger brain case and the ability to make tools, that the transition from apes to humans was actually quite quick, and that it was due to effort. Well, we now know that it wasn't quick. It was framed by a process that we definitely don't understand. It took quite some time. And there is still, even after all of this time, no connection between these guys, Homo, which means human. So all of these guys that have got Homo in front of their name are sorts of humans. We used to have lots of humans on planet Earth, like there's lots of different cats. We've got lions and tigers and polecats and domestic cats and lynxes. Well, humans used to be like that as well. There's only one human species left now, and that's us. Now, again, in Darwinian times, it was expected that they would find some kind of fossil evidence that there was a link between all these creatures that came before 2 million BC, okay, or 2 million years ago, and all the creatures that have come before. Now we're to 6 million years in the past. Can you see how we've snuck up on ourselves? Nearly all of time has already gone, and our most distant ancestors only turned up 2 million years ago. Now, this is one of the slides that's actually developing very, very quickly, and there's a lot more information now on DNA and the like, but the most important thing is that these two critters here, Homo ergaster and Homo habilis, these two suddenly arrived in the record with brain cases 50% bigger than any of these other guys. So these people, were also the first creatures on Earth to start developing tools, and they sprung up what is described by the archaeologists as quite suddenly in the Rift Valley in Africa. Now, so they had brain cases 50% bigger than anything that had gone before. There was still no archaeological evidence to connect humans with anything else that happened on the planet. It was thought that Homo habilis spread around the planet and that individual populations in China and Australia and all of that changed into Homo sapiens in India and China and all that. Well, that's obviously not a very good idea, because we know that localised populations would have developed differently. So even if you started with habilis everywhere, you'd end up with lots of different things. So it was thought at one point that we descended straight from these two. It's now known that we didn't. Homo sapiens, us, we've only been around 150,000 years. And they know that because the ladies in this room have got a mitochondrial DNA that reaches back right to the beginning of human beings, with only about 15 mutations between you and the dawn of the species. 150,000 years. Now, so instead of Homo ergaster coming out and turning into Homo sapiens, what it means is Habilis and ergaster came out of Africa and they died out. And we came out of Africa only 150,000 years ago, apparently unconnected again to any of the species that came before. We have a distant relative in Heidelbergensis, which we share with Homo neanderthalensis. Neanderthals, we tend to think of them as knuckle draggers, as very primitive people. But in fact, they were actually quite advanced. They had a hyoid bone. We reckon they could speak. By the time they'd been around for 125,000 years or so, they were burying their dead. And they were using red ochre. They were using red ochre for 35 or 40,000 years before they finally went extinct. So all of this means that they were in some way self-aware. They were aware enough to do what archaeologists would call ceremonial work. It was thought for a while that Neanderthal came about 250,000 years ago and that we were only 40,000 years old. We now know that actually Neanderthal is over 500,000 years old and it survived the advance and retreat of ice ages. Very hardy beastie. There were periods of, I don't want to go into too much detail, but here's a small lemur-like primate from 50 million years ago, and you can see the brain cases getting bigger and bigger. Something that's quite interesting to me is the latest evidence suggests that over these 50 million years, planet Earth has been cooling. And that during these cooling periods, there have been short periods, excuse me, during which the Earth has been warming. Now, these warming periods led to increases in the amount of forest and increases in the amount of primate, and you can see this happening in the fossil record. And as the place got cooler again and the forest disappeared, the primate populations disappeared with them. Anything that could survive could then move out again once the forests expanded. Now, each one of these warming periods in the general cooling trend tended to act in favour of the humans, in favour of the Homo, and not in favour of the apes. So that's one of the reasons why we probably ended up a little bit on top of the situation. 3 periods of that kind of warming. At the end of the last one, well, the end of 3 to 2 million years ago, we see the earliest habilis, the first of the big brain cases, and the first recognisable stone tools. It's only 1.7 million years ago that Homo erectus first left Africa. Remember, we kicked off 4,500 million years ago. Less than 2 million years ago that those first humans came out of Africa. And they went to Georgia, they went to Mojokerto in Java, and to a place in Israel. All places that would have been easily available to them. In fact, probably the land bridge from Africa to Eurasia was constantly being opened and closed as the temperatures changed around the place. The oldest flint heads in the UK are 700,000 years old. We have very little evidence of humans. Sometimes we find a thigh bone that's been chewed on by a hyena or something like that. But mostly what we find is artifacts, obviously because the stone stuff lasts a lot longer. Now, 400,000 years ago was the first kindled fire. Now you conclude for yourself, can you not? That if we've only been around 150,000 years and the oldest fire is 400,000 years old, then it was one of our predecessors who discovered fire and not Homo sapiens. The headless skeleton of the oldest modern human in Britain is found in a cave in the Gower Peninsula, with the surrounding earth showing traces of red ochre, and the body had been sprinkled with periwinkle shells. This is the oldest known modern human. We've got older skeletons and older bones in the UK, but this is the first one that we know is a modern human. It was buried without its head because by 27,000 years ago, or 27,000 BC, when this thing was put in the cave, I use BC rather than BCE, it's just a habit. I hope nobody thinks I'm being rude or discourteous. Now 27,000 years ago, as it happened, or just about when this body was put in this cave, was at the end of the last galactic year. When they buried this guy and there's this person in this cave, they would have either just been going from Pisces into Aquarius, or they'd have just moved across. There's various things in the Earth's wobble and tilt that make it a bit more than a 26,000 year cycle, but I really like that the oldest human in the UK was put in that cave without its head in the beginning of this galactic year. So they were looking at the big changes that we're looking at. The business with the head is that we'd already moved from animal cults by then, and humans had got to the point, I think the Neanderthals did as well, where they thought that the spirit resided in the head. So they'd have a tendency to bury the body and take the head home and use it as an oracle, or put it on a shrine. That's what we believe anyway. As it happened, when that first body was being put into that cave in the UK, there was a burial happening on the border of the Czech Republic and Austria. When I first discovered this picture, I read that it was a human sacrifice. 20, 30 years ago, archaeologists seem to quite often think that things were human sacrifices. We see a more modern presentation from anthropology.net which shows that it actually was a family burial of some sort. There's 2 men and 1 woman in this cave, in this burial. Also in this place, they found the body of an old woman who they reckon had had a stroke because she was really pulled down on one side. And in one hand she had the body of a fox, and in the other hand she had a spear, and there was red ochre between her legs. And it's reckoned that this might be one of the oldest burials of a shaman that we've got, and certainly one of the very few examples of the burial of a female shaman. She was buried underneath 2 mammoth scapulae. Dolly Vestonica, here it is, very cheerful looking place, occupied around until about 23,500 BC, from 27,000 BC. So people were here for 3,000 years. The remains of 5 buildings of how many people are surprised to see people making pottery in the Ice Age, 27,000 years ago? I was amazed. The only reason they found the place was because there was some kind of stuff on the surface which was very old, and that made them go and look. There's the remains of 5 buildings here. They're outlined by post holes, limestone blocks, and the whole place, right, these people were deeply, deeply untidy people. The whole place is covered by dense layers of artifacts. And those are tools and implements made of stone, bone and ivory, and lots and lots and lots of broken ceramics. Outside the settlement there's the remains of a substantial fence, and beyond that there's a vast accumulation of mammoth bones. It's reckoned that they were using the mammoth bones somehow to make the coke. They certainly used them to outline their buildings and things. And it's thought that the mammoths, they didn't hunt the mammoths. It's believed that mammoths probably did the same thing as elephants and other large creatures on the earth. As they get close to dying, it's hard for them to move their body around. So they go to boggy places where they can get a bit of buoyancy and eat on the stuff. So what you end up with is loads of mammoths all dying in the same place. And these guys chose to set up home there. 10,000 pieces of fired clay have been found just on the single acre that this site covers. The biggest buildings are 50 feet by 30 feet, which is not much smaller than this. This place is about 30 feet across and about 50 feet probably to just inside that last pillar there. So it's quite a big building. Inside it are 5 ceremonial hearths that are all being used to fire this pottery. They've got the best lice on planet Earth, so they've got the raw materials for clay that's got no oxygen bubbles in it. And that means that it's less likely to blow up when you put it in the oven. And yet every single piece in their whole place was either blown up in the ovens or was deliberately destroyed when they took it out. This is an example of us not knowing what the hell they thought they were doing. They were either the worst potters in history or they were doing something else. One of the ideas is that perhaps people went here with votive offerings to try and get a piece of land blessed or something like that, whatever they were doing, who knows. And the idea was that if it blew up in the kiln, then that was a good sign. And that, if you didn't blow up in the kiln, you'd best break it anyway. We really don't know. Whatever, unlike all the other people we're going to look at, or most of the other people we're going to look at, these guys left loads of stuff just lying around. They never seem to tidy up. Other places we're going to see are very different. Now, no single community can have had a need of the prodigious output that this place was putting out. Available evidence suggests that people came from here from as far away as 200 kilometres. That's in an ice age, 200 kilometres. It's the home of portraiture, the oldest representations of men, women, animals, ornaments, enigmatic engravings are all available in Dolní Věstonice. And this is a particularly lovely thing. It's about 3.5 inches tall, so it's about this big. It's a picture, it's a piece of portraiture of a young male with fairly protruding brow. He's got several actual quite Neanderthal features. Long hair, you can see there's kind of like a beard, the marks of a beard. Absolutely, see the eye, the detail on that. This thermoluminescent dating has dated this carving to 29,000 years ago.